There is a particular kind of grief that has no name. It is not the grief of losing someone to death. It is not the grief of a relationship that burned out or faded or simply ran its course. It is the grief of looking back at 23 years of a friendship, 23 years of inside jokes and midnight phone calls and standing beside each other at every important moment, and realizing that somewhere inside all of that, there was a lie, not a small lie, a lie that had been living quietly in the foundation of everything for 15 years. Her name is Sana. She has been my best friend since we were 9 years old. Was. I still don't know which tense is correct. I am not sure I will know for a very long time. What she hid from me was not about her. That is the part that took my breath away when I finally understood it. It was about me, about my life, about a door that was quietly, carefully, permanently closed before I ever had the chance to walk through it. And she watched me. For 15 years. She watched me wonder why that door had never opened. And she never said a word. Sana and I met in the 4th grade. She had just moved to our school from another city. Quiet, watchful, the way new children are when they haven't yet found where they belong. I sat next to her at lunch on her 3rd day because the seat was empty and I didn't think anything of it. She had a thermos of her mother's biryani and I had a peanut butter sandwich, and we talked for the entire lunch period about nothing important and everything important simultaneously, the way 9-year-olds do when they have just found their person. We were inseparable after that. Through middle school and high school and the particular intensity of being teenage girls navigating the world together. Through family difficulties, hers were significant, mine were quieter, and first heartbreaks and exam pressure and the slow, terrifying business of deciding who you were going to be. Sana was the person I called first. Always. Good news, bad news, confusing news, no news at all, I called Sana. She was my interpreter, my mirror, my safe place, the person in whose presence I was most completely myself. I thought she felt the same way about me. I still believe she did. That is the complicated part. I believe she loved me genuinely and completely. I just also believe that love is not always enough to make a person honest. That sometimes people love you and still make choices that serve themselves first. And that 15 years of silence is not something you can explain away with love alone, no matter how real the love was. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about Karan first. When I was 24, I fell in love for the first time in a way that felt entirely real. His name was Karan. He was a friend of a friend. We had met at a gathering, talked for 3 hours without noticing the time, and exchanged numbers at the end of the night with the particular charged awareness of two people who both know something has just begun. We dated for 4 months, careful, hopeful, the way you are when you are 24 and have had enough disappointments to take things slowly, but enough hope left to try anyway. And then he disappeared. No fight. No clear ending. He simply became less present. Messages that took longer to be returned, plans that were canceled and not rescheduled, a warmth that slowly cooled in ways I could feel but not point to. And then, one evening, a final message saying that he was sorry, that he cared about me, but that he didn't think it was going to work. No reason. No explanation. Just the door. Closing. I was devastated in the clean, complete way you can only be devastated at 24. I analyzed it endlessly, wondered what I had done wrong, what I could have done differently, whether I had misread everything or whether something had happened that I simply couldn't see. Sana held me through it the way she always held me, steady, present, full of the right words. She said Karan clearly didn't know what he had walked away from. She said I deserved better. She said the right door would open when the time was right. I believed her. I moved on. Slowly, but I moved on. I married someone else at 30, a good man, a genuinely good man, and I have a life I love. I want to be clear about that. But Karan remained, in the quiet corner of my memory where unexplained things live, a question I had never been able to fully answer. Why had he left with no explanation? I found out 15 years later, from the last person I would have ever suspected. It began with a chance encounter at a wedding, a mutual acquaintance from our university years, a woman named Deepa, who I had not seen in a decade, was seated beside me at the reception dinner. We caught up in the way of people who were once peripheral to each other's lives and are now simply curious. Jobs, marriages, children, the usual geography of an adult life. And then Deepa mentioned, as casually as you mention anything at a wedding dinner, that she had run into Karan recently. I smiled, said something neutral, felt the old question stir briefly, and prepared to let it pass. And then Deepa said, he asked about you, actually. Said he'd always wondered how things might have been different, that he still didn't fully understand why Sana had told him what she did. I went very still. I'm sorry, I said. What did you say? Deepa looked momentarily uncertain, the expression of someone who has just realized they may have said something they weren't supposed to. Oh, I assumed you knew. He mentioned that Sana had spoken to him years ago when you two were dating. I kept my voice completely even. No, I said. I didn't know. What did she tell him? Deepa hesitated. Then, slowly, she told me what Karan had told her. 5 seconds. Sana had contacted Karan privately shortly into our relationship. She had told him that I was not available, not truly, that I had been seeing someone else and was not serious about Karan, that she was telling him as a friend to spare him from being hurt further down the line. None of it was true. There was no one else. I had been entirely, openly, genuinely available. Sana had lied to Karan, deliberately, specifically, with enough detail and enough apparent concern for his well-being that he had believed her, and he had walked away, and I had spent 15 years wondering why. I drove home from that wedding with my hands very steady on the wheel and something enormous and unprocessed sitting in the passenger seat beside me. I did not call Sana that night, or the next day. I needed to be certain first. Not of what I had heard. Deepa had been clear and had no reason to invent anything, but certain within myself about what I was going to say and how I was going to say it and what I actually wanted from the conversation that was coming. Because here was the thing I kept circling. Why? Sana had never expressed anything negative about Karan, had never suggested at the time that she had any reservations about him or about the relationship. She had seemed, as best I could remember, supportive, present, the same Sana she always was. So why had she gone to him privately and ended it? I called her on a Thursday evening. I asked if I could come over. She said, of course, come for dinner, her usual warmth, no indication that anything was different. I sat across from her in her kitchen, the kitchen where I had sat 1,000 times, and I told her what Deepa had told me. The silence that followed was the longest I have ever sat through. Sana did not deny it. That is something. She did not reach for a counterstory or accuse Deepa of lying or look for any exit. She just sat with it. And then, slowly, she began to talk. Karan, she told me, had once been involved with her cousin. Briefly, years before I met him, a relationship her cousin had not recovered from easily. When she saw me falling for him, she had felt something she could not control, a protective fury on her cousin's behalf, a certainty that Karan was not someone who deserved another chance at someone she loved. She had acted on it, without telling me, without asking me, without giving me any of the information that would have allowed me to make my own choice. She had decided for me. "I thought I was protecting you," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You took something from me," I said. "You didn't protect me. You made a decision about my life and then watched me wonder for 15 years why he left." She was crying by then. I was not. I was somewhere beyond crying, in the cold, clear place you reach when a thing is simply too large for tears. I want to be precise about what was taken from me. Because it was not Karan himself. I have a husband I love, a life I chose. I am not sitting here telling you that Karan was the great love I was robbed of. I don't know that. I don't know what would have happened if the relationship had continued. Maybe it would have ended anyway. Maybe it would have been wonderful. Maybe it would have been ordinary. I will never know. What was taken from me was the choice, the chance to find out for myself, to walk through the door if I wanted to, or close it myself when I was ready, to have the experience of that ending, whatever it would have been, belong to me rather than be manufactured by someone else's decision. And for 15 years, my closest friend had sat with the knowledge of what she had done and said nothing. Through my wedding, through the birth of my daughter, through every conversation where Karan's name had come up, distantly, as the one who had never explained himself. She had sat with it. I have thought a great deal about why she never told me. I think she was afraid, not of me knowing what she had done, but of losing me once I did. Every year that passed made the telling harder, the secret heavier, the cost of confession higher. The lie had grown into something so large she couldn't see around it anymore. That is what 15 years of unspoken guilt does. It doesn't lighten, it compounds. Sana reached out 2 weeks after that evening. A long message, the kind you write and delete and rewrite many times before sending. She did not make excuses. She said she had been carrying the shame of it since the day she did it, and that every year she had told herself she would tell me, and every year she had been too afraid. She said, "I know this doesn't help, but there has not been a single day when I didn't know it was wrong. I just loved myself more than I loved you that day. And I have hated myself for it ever since." I read that message many times. I am still deciding what to do with it. Karma, in this story, is not a single moment. It is 15 years of guilt carried in silence. 15 years of sitting across from your best friend and knowing every single day that the friendship is built on something she doesn't know. 15 years of watching her wonder about an ending you manufactured and saying nothing, and paying for that silence internally in ways that no one else could see. Sana paid, perhaps not in the way that feels satisfying to the part of us that wants wrongdoing to be punished publicly and completely, but she paid in the private currency of guilt, which is, in many ways, the heaviest currency there is. As for Karan, I found him. Not romantically. I simply needed to close something that had been left open. I sent him a short message explaining that I had recently learned what had happened 15 years ago and that I wanted him to know, for whatever it was worth, that I had not been seeing anyone else, that what he was told had not been true. He replied the same day. He said he had always felt somewhere that something hadn't added up, that he was sorry for believing it, for not asking me directly, for the ending that neither of us had chosen. It was a short conversation. It needed to be. But when I closed the message, something that had been sitting at the edge of me for 15 years, that unanswered question, that unresolved note in the melody of my past, went quiet. Not every door needs to be walked through, but some doors simply need to be properly closed. I have not yet decided about Sana. I don't think forgiveness is a switch you flip. I think it is something you arrive at slowly or not at all, and that either outcome is valid and neither requires an announcement. What I know is this: the people we trust most have the greatest capacity to hurt us, not because they are bad people, but because the access is so complete. Sana knew my life. She was inside it. The lie she told was small in the world's terms and enormous in mine precisely because of how close she was. If you are carrying a secret about someone you love, something you did, something you knew, something you chose not to say, I am not telling you what to do. But I will tell you what 15 years costs. It costs the friendship. Not always in the final dramatic sense, but in the way that the foundation of a thing, once you know it had a crack in it, can never feel entirely solid again. Tell the truth while you can still tell it for the right reasons, before the years make it heavier than both of you can carry. This has been Soul Tales. My name is Priya, and somewhere, a woman named Sana is waiting to find out if 23 years enough to survive 15 years of silence is. I don't have that answer yet,